Good afternoon or good evening or wherever you're listening to live or looking back. Episode 201 of the Tree Talk podcast. We had episode 200 last week. So if you want to get our top 10 moments from the last 4 years or so, you can go back and watch that. But today we've another bumper episode. I'm sick of saying it. Well, I'm not sick of saying it, but I say it every week. We have the hurling to look back on. We also have the final round in the top four football championships. We've ladies football, some semi-finals tonight, and obviously more at the weekend. Loads to get through, Matt, and try and get it done in the bones of an hour. After last week we ran a bit long, so we'll try and get it all done. So stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawty Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
I suppose anyone that I thought was going at live at half two, we were a bit delayed. We were looking through permutations and all that, and I suppose that's what always goes in to the final round, Matt. And we will go through the top two grades in the men's football. But we had a very eventful week in the hurling last week. We'll go to the hurling last. We'll start with the football, but before we get into it, Matt, I suppose happy Wednesday. And how are you keeping?
I'm good today, Jack. Very good.
Yeah.
Tis Wednesday, and as you know, in the paper industry, tis the for the weekly papers, it's the end of the week.
Yeah, it's your weekend, to be fair, but I suppose it was.
But in reality, the weekend starts now. The next week starts now. You know, that's how cyclic it is. You know.
Yeah, it was another eventful weekend with the hurling and permutations all over the place, and I suppose we have the knockout stages in the senior, intermediate, and junior. But I suppose that Premier Intermediate competition is really living up to the billing that we hype so much every year, with 6 teams, no team qualified going into the final round, and 6 teams vying for 4 spots. But as I said, we will get into the hurling later on in the show. But we will start with the football. We have the final round of the senior football championships in Group 1. We have Newcastle West against Father Casey's, Monaleen versus Claghon, and Ula versus Galway. And I suppose each game, has something going for you, kind of top of the table, mid-table, and then fighting for the relegation. We'll start with the game that's been streamed from Drumcolor Broadford this Sunday, Newcastle West versus Father Casey's. Both of them, 100% record so far, 4 wins from 4. They're both already through. But I suppose, like doing a Kilmarnock last week in the hurling, it's kind of a winner takes all, that the winner will go into the semi-final. And I suppose Newcastle have to be favourites. They're champions for a reason. But for Father Casey's, the quarter-final has proved very sticky in recent years. So it would be, I suppose, very beneficial for them that if they could win the game on Sunday, they would skip that quarterfinal. It's become a bit of a hoodoo and be straight into the semi-finals.
Yeah, I've seen Father Casey's twice, and I have been impressive. I've been very impressed with him once, and less impressed with him a second time. But of course, the second time, you know, all you can do is play what is put in front of you, you know, and once you get the result, it's job done. And they're in the position that they're in now, Jack, on merit. There isn't any doubt at all about that. And it seems at last that the hard work that they have put in over the years and the success that they have garnered and enjoyed over the last couple of years, it's beginning to bear fruit. Father Casey's, by any benchmark, are a formidable side. They have assembled a formidable side, a good mix of youth and experience. But they face probably, they face a very, very strong Newcastle West team. When it comes to Limerick football, Limerick club football, I suppose Newcastle West are the team that tick all the boxes, Jack, and they're there too on merit. And I get a sense that they're there very comfortably in the position that they're in, and I think for Newcastle West, they will say to themselves probably now, 3 more games, and we've retained the county title for the first time ever in our history. And there is nothing better to motivate Newcastle West or spur them into action than a game with their arch rivals, Father Casey's. So I expect that Newcastle West will really step on the gas now, and as I said, that get a win on Saturday. It is, I think, isn't it, Jack?
No, Sunday. It's Group 2
Saturday.
Saturday.
Sunday. The other group is on Saturday. On Sunday, and it's 2 more games, and they're crowned champions. But it's a fascinating game. Like it's 2 teams that are there on merit, and 2 teams with 100% records. Something has to give, and it'll be very interesting to see what the outcome will be.
Yeah, something definitely has to give. I'll just drop the table there for the meantime, just so people get a sense of it. So there they are, the top of the table. Winner take all and straight into the semi-final. Then obviously we said about that mid-table battle between Claughaun and Monaleen. There's a place in the quarter-final for the winner of that. That's at 4:00 in Mungret on Sunday afternoon. For Monaleen, a draw will do because of their superior scoring difference, -4 against -18. Claughaun need to win. I suppose both teams were in the quarter-finals last year. Monaleen reached the semi-final. You could say Monaleen are perennial contenders. Claughaun are obviously only in their second year back up. It's an interesting game. Claughaun have shown snippets of what they're capable of, and similarly have Monaleen. But you mentioned that game, Monaleen versus Father Casey's. It was quite a poor showing from the City side that we kind of had earmarked as probably the second team in the group behind Newcastle. Claughaun will fancy their chances this weekend.
They will. They will, and probably justifiably so. That it's their second year up. They consolidated last year, but this is a City derby, and in typical derby fashion, form tends to go out the window, especially when these 2 meet as well, because there would be a certain level of rivalry between them, because they've been 2 of the top football contenders in the city now for a while. But Monaleen, if you look back at Monaleen for the last number of years, Jack, in the football championship, they have started slowly. But when it gets into the business end of the competition, you see a different Monaleen that they really can, get up for it, and they've been hovering around, Jack, in quarterfinals and semi-finals for the last number of years without being overly impressive in the group stages. So it's around this time of the year that a Monaleen challenge for the championship usually takes off. Now, for Claughaun, of course, it would be a massive landmark. Second year up, were they to make it to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you would block there for a second. It would be. I was actually impressed with Claughaun last year. I thought they have built in it, but as you said, Monaleen are kind of, they do kick into gear. I remember last year in the quarterfinals, they're against a Casey side that we fancied, and they got over the line. They'll just be thinking, if we get into the quarterfinals, we can beat anyone. They're obviously without Brian O'Donovan for the start of the season. I'd imagine he's back in the country. I'd imagine he'll be playing. He's a huge differential for any team, and I suppose to round out the group, then you have Ula and Galbally. I suppose for Galbally, a draw is enough here to avoid that relegation playoff. That they have that draw against Claughaun from earlier on. Ula are pointless so far. It has been a disappointing campaign for them, but again, it's a winner take all kind of battle here. If you win that game, especially for Ula, you can put the disappointment of the first 4 games behind you and look forward to next year. But as tense as it is at the top, and I suppose in Claughaun and Monaleen, this one is really where there's going to be a lot of nervous energy, and it's, I suppose, who can keep their head on the day that will avoid that dreaded relegation final.
Yeah, Jack, these 2 teams are in a position, the position they're in for a reason. And the reason is quite simple. You know, at the top of the table, we have Father Casey's and Newcastle West, both unbeaten. Here we have Galway and Ula, who haven't won a football match between them in the 4 rounds. And Galway got what was a fortuitous draw against Clahan in the first round with a last-minute goal. And I'm actually very surprised, Jack, at the decline of Ula. It's not too long ago since they contested the county senior final, and 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2019 against Newcastle.
Yeah, when they went through the group stages unbeaten, and you know, really took the championship by storm. And there was a sense around that time that Ula were going to be a force to be reckoned with for quite a while. Luckily for Ula, despite their 4 losses, they're in a position that were they to pick up the win against Galway, that they would be safe. But of course, that's another question. It's been disappointing for Galway as well, because it's not too long ago, Jack, since they contested the semi-final. I think it was 2020, was it?
2020, yeah, I think so there.
If I'm right. It has been downhill since, basically, for them. This is going to be a very, very interesting game. Of course, the loser will be playing Ballylanders, much as I hate to say it, in the relegation playoff. But this, you know, is a de facto relegation playoff, and these type of games take on a life of their own. So I'm going out to Cappamore on Sunday to see that game. So I'm really looking forward to the game. But you know, it's a hard game to call now.
Yeah, and I suppose we are in the business of predicting these games. We'll get to them at the end of the podcast. But as you said, like, it's pretty much relegation semi-final, and those games, you know, they can go either way. Moving into Group 2 then, similarly, there's a top of the table clash, Adair versus St. Kieran's. I'll get the table up for the next round of games because that's when the points come into it. But Adair are on 8 points, Kieran's are on 7. St. Kieran's need to beat Adair. You know, for Kieran's, this is probably a bit of bonus territory when you consider their last couple of years. They were, I suppose, off the boil. They were involved in relegation playoffs for the last 2 years. This is more like the St. Kieran's we know. Adair probably haven't been as impressive as we've seen in the last 2 years, but they still managed to get the job done, 4 from 4. You know, it's a really interesting clash, very hard to call, but a huge prize on offer. Again, St. Kieran's, they got the semi-final in 2019, but after contesting 2 relegation playoffs, they'd love to be back into a semi-final at the right end of, I suppose, the Senior Football Championship.
Yeah, we talk about you know, Kildare, Pallaskenry and their dual involvement, and a lot of clubs have dual involvement. But St. Kieran's are in a similar situation, and in many ways they mirror what is happening in Kildare, Pallaskenry. They went through the group stage of the Junior A Hurling Championship unbeaten. Of course, you remember they were beaten county finalists in that last year. So they're trying to juggle between hurling and football, and there's a bit of a crossover there. And but you're absolutely right, Jack, when you say that they're in bonus territory. Like if you said to St. Kieran's, given their record over the last couple of years, and I'll qualify it in a minute, over the last couple of years that they'd be contending for the semi-final, guaranteed a quarter-final place going into the final round, I'm sure they'd bite the hand off you. Yeah. But you must remember, Jack, and when we've mentioned this before, and this is how I qualified by saying that last year I think they lost both games by a single point to Galtee Gales and to Ballysteen. So, you know, maybe, yes, they were in the relegation, and with a bit of luck, you'd have to say somewhere along the line they may not have been in it. But like having been involved in relegation scraps for the last 2 years, they certainly have really reinvented themselves, and they are a formidable outfit now. Make no mistake about it. And I've seen them a couple of times, and they are where they are, Jack, on merit. No question about it. And they're a team that are extremely hard to beat because they don't know when they're beaten, because they have resilience. And we saw it particularly in the opening round against Kildimo Pallaskenry, when their backs were to the wall and they dug it out. So look, Adair will probably be favourites, 4 wins from 4. They have a phenomenal record in football over the last couple of years. I suppose relegation back in the day, about 5 or 6 years ago, proved to be the catalyst. And like, they have a Premier Intermediate, and is it 3 seniors, 1 since?
3 seniors,
which is fantastic. Two Premier Under-21 football championships. There's a reservoir of footballers in Adair. And the thing about it is, Jack, Adair seem to have been around forever in football, but actually their team is quite a young team in terms.
Very young.
Maybe they're old in terms of football played, but certainly, age-wise, they're still a very, very young team. That will be a very, very interesting game. And of course, the permutation is quite simple. None of the other 4 clubs in the group can come near them. They're fighting out for first and second. Adair win or draw, they have it. St. Kieran's win, and they're into the semi-final.
Yeah, and I suppose for St. Kieran's, it's bonus territory in a way after when you consider the last 2 years. But no one expects them to be, I suppose, languishing in the lower end the last 2 years. This is more of where you would expect St. Kieran's to be. They're obviously had a lot of injuries last year. They seem to have far more of a clean bill of health, and they're showing that. And I suppose while they'll be juggling with the hurling, Adair's season for the hurlers came to an end over the weekend. They were obviously relegated, so I suppose that might play into Adair's hand a small bit, or else there could be, I suppose, low morale for the dual players. So yeah, really interesting. We'll have our first semi-final.
Well, no, I would imagine it would be the opposite. That it'll be a case of salvage something from the season.
Yeah, they'd be hoping for it, but if the tide is going against you, it's hard to turn it. So I suppose we're 5:30 in Croke. We'll have our first semi-finalist, and the loser, or if it's a draw, one team will obviously be into the quarterfinal. Then I suppose that third quarterfinal place is keenly contested. This weekend's fixtures: Kildimo Pallaskenry versus Ballysteen at 4 o'clock in the Bog Garden, and then you have Galtee Gales versus Badlanders at the same time in Kilfinnan. Permutations: Kildimo Pallaskenry, no win would be probably more than enough. They're 19 points ahead of Galtee Gales in terms of score difference. If they lose, Ballysteen can get in ahead of them as long as Galtee Gales don't win, because they have head-to-head over Ballysteen. And for Galtee Gales, they'll be hoping for a draw, I suppose, another game, and a win would be enough to avoid a count of points differential. It's one where permutations come into play. We'll start with KP versus Ballysteen, because obviously 2 teams that are on 3 points, and you talk about, I suppose, bringing momentum from the other code into it. No team, I suppose, no club is on a crest of a wave like Kildimo Pallaskenry at the moment. A third promotion in hurling in 5 years was achieved over the weekend, but when you consider football into that, that's 5 promotions in, I think it's 8 years. A really incredible feat. And they'll be confident going into the game.
They will be confident, Jack. Both teams, of course, are coming into the game on back of draws. Kildimo Pallaskenry drew with Galtee Gales in one of the finest football games I've seen in Limerick for quite a while. And you were at the Ballysteen game yourself, which was a draw with St. Kieran's, when Ballysteen staged a very late rally to snatch a division of the points. So it sets it all up nicely. Your analysis of the permutations are absolutely correct. If Kildimo Pallaskenry win and the Gales win, unless there's a massive turnaround in scoring difference, it's Kildimo Pallaskenry. If Ballysteen win and the Gales win, then it's the Gales go through, because they have the head-to-head on Ballysteen. So it makes for a very, very interesting game. It certainly makes for a very interesting game. Kildimo Pallaskenry and Ballysteen. It's certainly it's a novel game at this level. They have never met at this level before. But you're right when you say that it has been going swimmingly well for for Kildimo Palace Kenry this year, and these things can become contagious, between hurling and football. And we have seen in the past, we've seen Clonlara and Clare, we've seen Lockmore, Castellani and Tipperary very successfully juggling the two codes when it comes to the concluding stages. So like Kildimo Palace Kenry, they have momentum going in, because even though they haven't played a football match for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, their hurlers are after putting back to 3 wins in a row together. So they have momentum. But of course, Palestine can be waiting in the long grass for them. And they knowing that a win could possibly be enough to see them through to the quarterfinals. So very interesting, that game, Jack.
Yeah, it is. I suppose for KP, it's safe to say they have it in their own hands. I don't think we're going to see a 19-point swing, really, especially if they win, it would go up to at least 20 points. So whereas for ourselves in Palestine, we're hopeful for Galtygale's favour. That game as well, even though Ballylanders are into relegation playoff, that's their last chance, to get a really competitive game before they play Ula or Galway. It'll be no means like a walkover for Galtygales, who'll be gunning for victory. Like there's still an awful lot to play for in that game, even though Galtygales know that it's probably not in their hands either, and Ballylanders are in a relegation final. You'd probably expect a very interesting game there for those sides.
Oh, you do. This is a Galties derby, Jack, and I'm right here in the middle of it. And you saw Blackrock in the hurling last week. They went into play Mungret St. Paul's with nothing to play for, and you see the type of performance that they put up. And I suppose has people begging the question: had they put up that type of performances earlier, we might have a different story. But I saw Bally against the Dare, and they were desperate unlucky, Jack, that they didn't win the match. They were beaten by a point. They're minus, of course, their talisman, Jimmy Barry Murphy, like through injury, which is a huge loss to him. But you're right, they need to get a result and need to get a performance against Galtygales to have momentum going into the relegation playoff, which could conceivably be next door neighbours. You could have a Galway Ballylanders relegation playoff is a possibility. It's a 50-50 chance, really. But I think the Gales I have something about them that I think the Gales on Sunday or Saturday will put themselves in a position, Jack, that they'll put it up to Kildimo Palace Kenry to win to put them out, because there's something about the Gales. As I say, I'm a bit disappointed actually that they're in this position, that they're not in a stronger position. But it is what it is, Jack. Whether to win, they'll end up with 5 points out of 10. But I thought they had a very disappointing performance against St. Kieran's, and I think that was mainly their undoing. Now they lost the opening round to Adair on a night when they were minus Tom Childs and Sean McGrath and a couple of big key players. But it's going to be a very, very interesting derby, and I'm really looking forward to it. But you're right; it's not a foregone conclusion that the Gales will beat Ballylanders. All right, Ballylanders may have nothing to play for. There is the question of pride. There's the question of bragging rights. But above all, Jack, there is the question of momentum going into a crucial relegation final. Yeah,
the thing for Ballylanders is they know exactly what's ahead of them. Galtygales will, I suppose, be waiting by phones and things to see what's going on in the Bog Gardens. But for Ballylanders, they know they definitely have another game. And you said momentum and bragging rights and all that. But I will get you to call it there in a while. Into the Intermediate Football Championship, and we'll just run through it briefly there. There's St. Pat's season is came to an end with, I suppose, Bruff's walkover there. Pats are in a decent position. We know the Pierce are through. They can be caught by Croker-Manister to go level on points with them, and they need a huge swing of scoring, but they can't be overhauled from the quarterfinal stages. This weekend we have the Pierce versus Glynn, and we have St. Sinners versus Croker-Manister. So you're pretty much looking at a Croker-Manister and St. Sinners straight shootout in one game, Matt. Which way do you see that going to join the Pierce and Pats?
You're asking me to make a prediction of it. I think St. Sinners would probably win it, Jack. And if they do, that would open the door for St. Pat's to go through to the quarterfinal, where Croker-Manister to upset the odds and win. Then it's curtains for Pats, because they will finish level on points with St. Sinners, and St. Sinners have the head-to-head on them. The Pierce played Glen, and when the Pierce win that, and I think they'd be favourites to win it, they will be outright at the top of the table into the semi-final. Like, for the Pierce, it's been a phenomenal year so far, Jack. Into the senior hurling semi-final, intermediate hurling semi-final, intermediate football semi-final. And I don't know why we say are we surprised? No, we're not, Jack, because no. I think you and I flagged it at the very start of the year that Napier would be possibly the team to beat in the intermediate football championship. Now, the only blemish on a 100% record to date was a draw with Croker-Manister, and they were there to lose and Croker-Manister win. I think they have a points scoring difference advantage on Croker-Manister. Yeah. Now, Sinnons will want. It's not too long ago since Sinnons were playing senior football. They won the county. They won the intermediate championship. I think it was in 2018, Jack. They were relegated in 2020. They just had 2 seasons up, and they will be anxious to get back up to senior ranks, because they believe it's their destiny. I think Sinnons will win that game, and I think Napier will beat Glen.
Yeah, St. Sinnons came up in 17, if I'm right, because I remember in 2018 they probably should have beaten it there. Right. They should have beaten it there in Newcastle in 18, and then in 19 they were relegated. They were 19 they were in our group.
I was a year out. They won it in 2017. They beat Galway, I think, in the final. Galway came back and won it the following year. And
your point still stands. Like, it's not that long since they were a senior team and competing with the likes of Adair, and they were beating Drum at the time, who were in senior. But yeah, you'd fancy Sinnons to come through that game. But Croker, in their second season in intermediate, will be looking to build on that experience from winning the junior a couple of years ago, and showed in winning the junior that when push comes to shove, that they can deliver. But into group two,
and Jack, they struggled a bit last year in intermediate, and they'll be saying to themselves, "Look, we can give this a right cut now. We've no relegation worries. They've put to bed the qualification in the junior hurling championship, and they'll be able to focus everything on the hour at the weekend. So they could make it difficult for St. Sinnons. I have a feeling for St. Sinnons in that one, Jack.
Yeah, I do too. I suppose then Group 2 is messy, for want of a better word. With there's, as you can see there's 4 teams on 6 points already. Rakiel are already there. After being given a walkover by Father Casey's. Drumbradford played Palace Green, and Mungret St. Paul's play Gerald Griffins. You could have the scenario that if Drum and Mungret, or if Drum win, they'll go top of the group because they have the head-to-head over Mungret and Gerald Griffins. I suppose if you have a draw between Drumbradford and Palace Green and a draw into their game, you'll have a messy scenario with 3 teams on 7 points for the top of the table and a place in the semi-final. But I suppose you expect Drum to get the job done anyway, Matt, before we go into the other game between Mungret and Gerald Griffins.
Yeah, it's been a difficult year for Palace Green in hurling and in football. Even though they got through in the hurling last weekend with 2 wins out of 5, So you'd have to think that their focus now will be solely on hurling, because they've got very little to play for in football other than pride. Now, Drumcollar have hit a very good vein of form. They've won 3 out of 4 games. The only game they lost was to Rathkeale. So, and the 2 teams there at the top, they have beaten both of them. And as you rightly flagged, if Drumcollar or Bradford beat Pallasgreen, they will snaffle the semi-final spot. And then it will come down to what will happen after that. What will happen between Mungret St. Paul's and Gerald Griffins. A draw, of course, would mean that Rathkeale would be out. And I think both Gerald Griffins and Mungret St. Paul's have the head-to-head on Rathkeale in any case.
Yeah.
So the only scenario that could save Rathkeale is if Drumcollar or Bradford were to lose.
And there was a draw in the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they would force a head-to-head. No, even if Drum were to lose, Rathkeale have a scoring difference advantage on Drum.
Oh yes, they do. Yeah. Oh yeah, if there's a winner in the other game, so Drum need to win, essentially, is what we're saying here, or they'll be gone. No, yeah, they will, unless obviously Gerald Griffins get an awful hockey in from Mungret, because they're just looking at it here. Mungret are on +41, Gerald Griffins are on 19, Rathkeale on 5, and Drumcollar Bradford on 0. But there is the issues of walkovers in that group, so that's when it gets kind of messy. So you'd be hopeful that won't come into play. But if you were to call the 3 teams to come from the group, Matt?
Yeah, I definitely call Drum Bradford anyway, and because I think they will have enough for Pallasgreen, and I find it very hard to oppose Mungret St. Paul's and Gerald Griffins.
with the winner in that game.
Well, look, there's no calling in it. I'm calling Drum Bradford, and if they win, Mungret and Gerald Griffins are through with them.
That's really staying on the fence there now.
No, they're through with him if Drum Bradford win, because irrespective of the outcome of the other game, they have the head-to-head on Rathkeale.
Yeah, but you're
the real game that everything is contingent in that group, Jack, is Drum Bradford against Pallasgreen.
Yeah, I suppose the thing for Mungret and Gerald Griffins is those games are on the same time, so they won't know what's happening. Mungret St. Paul's or Gerald Griffins in the Bog Garden at 1 on Sunday, and Drum Bradford versus Pallasgreen at the same time in Clorina on the same day. On Saturday, it's Glynn versus Pierce and Skeeton at 3, and Cora Manister versus Sennons at the same time in Clorina. Those are the intermediate football championships. There's obviously the final round in the Premier Junior and the Junior A, and all those fixtures and permutations will be on the website in the coming days. But as we always say, we don't have enough time to get to, I suppose, everything on the podcast over the course of about an hour. Tonight, Matt, so Wednesday, if you're watching on Wednesday, the 21st September, we have our 2 ladies senior football semi-finals. We have St. Ailbe's versus Drum Bradford, and then we have a repeat of last year's final, Monaghay versus Ballylanders. We'll start with Drum and St. Ailbe's at 8 o'clock this evening in Mount Collins. St. Ailbe's, I suppose, were dethroned at the same stage last year. They had won the championship in 2019 and 2020. Drum Bradford are back-to-back defending intermediate champions in their first year, and they've really, I suppose, hit the ground running. St. Ailbe's were impressive in their group and have only played 2 games, whereas Drum have played 4. But to be fair, they've won 3 of those 4 games, only losing to Monaghay in their first game back in the senior ranks. Ailbe's will be favourites, but I mean, Drum really do have a chance here to upset the odds once more.
They have, Jack. It's been a smashing year so far for Drum Bradford by any benchmark. You know, as you rightly said, they came up as intermediate champions, and after losing to Monaghay in the first round, they've recorded wins over St. Bridget's and Old Mill, and then through to the quarter final where they had a very, very good win over this year's league champions, Fiona Castlemahan. And like the 4-2, while St. Ailbe's would be firm favourites going into the game, I feel that Drumconnell's Broadford's activity, while St. Ailbe's have been idle, I feel it would close the gap and make this a very, very interesting encounter, and very, very interesting to see who will come through. I saw Ailbe's in the second round against Ballylanders. They scored a goal in injury time to win the game by a point. They look pretty formidable. And there isn't any doubt at all about that. But you know, it's an interesting game, and it will come down to how will St. Ailbe's adapt to the layoff. Because certainly from Bradford will hit the ground running, because they have been active week on week. Now, Ailbe's have been boosted this year by the return of Mairead Kavanagh and the former Monaghan player Grania McKenna linking up with him. So they will be a much stronger outfit than last year. I think they'll probably get over the line, Jack, but only just.
Yeah, you'd have to hedge towards Ailbe's. They've all that experience, you know, in the senior ranks, as you rightly pointed out. But, you know, at Drum will be a dangerous team with no fear. We spoke about bonus territory earlier on today. They're certainly in bonus territory. I think it's fair to say, after winning the intermediate championship, no, you just want to consolidate your position in there and kind of get used to that level. But they've certainly done that and more. You'd fancy Ailbe's, but you know, it could go either way. And then the other one, then a repeat of last year's final, which was the case 12 months ago as well, I think, for Monagate, or Monagate, sorry, it was Old Mill, never mind. But yeah, a repeat of last year's final. Monagate won by 3 points to win their third title. Ballylanders will certainly be looking for revenge. They've gone, I suppose, the longer route. They lost to St. Ailbe's, as you mentioned there, and they had to come through a quarter-final, but very impressive against Old Mill. They were in that quarter-final, whereas Monagate, straightforward, beat Trum, St. Bridget's, and Old Mill to go through to the semi-final. Like you said with St. Ailbe's, they'll have had that long break. You know, it's what they've done. I know a lot of them will have hurled in the meantime, but Ballylanders will be hopeful that, you know, maybe a slow start, they can get ahead and keep ahead of the defending champions.
Yeah, you see, Monagate were in a 4-club group. Ballylanders were in a 3-club group. Now, Ballylanders on the opening day, they went to Cooley to play Fiona Castlemahan and came away with a very narrow 1-point victory. And as I said to you, the game that I was at, they lost at home then to St. Ailbe's by a single point. But I think Ballylanders probably really found that championship form, Jack, in the quarter-final win over Old Mill in a couple of weeks ago, and 10 days ago now. And it was a repeat of last year's semi-final. And it was a game, last year's semi-final was a game where Ballylanders appeared to be in control, but just couldn't simply put Old Mill away. But I think on this occasion, they were much more comfortable. You know, we talked about Monagate or Newcastle West footballers ticking all the boxes. I suppose Monagate tick all the boxes when it comes to ladies football. And there's a big crossover, as we know, between them and Newcastle West Camogie. And like you can't argue with their credentials. 3 straight wins over Bradford, St. Bridget's, and Old Mill. And it's going to be a fascinating final. There was only 3 points between them last year in the county final. But you must remember that in that county final last year, Ballylanders played for 40 minutes with just 14 players, because they had 4 sin bins. You know, which was crucial. And of course, Bally will have a mission. They'll be on a mission tonight. You know, when they go to Knocklong, to atone for last year. They'll be boosted by Andre O'Sullivan and Claude McGrath returning to their ranks. You know, there's a potential for an upset here in this, Jack, and I'm not being parochial or I'm not anything like that, but I think Bally have the capacity maybe to upset the odds in this one.
Yeah, I suppose Monaghan are going for a 6th final as well in a row, which would be an incredible achievement when you consider what a lot of them have done with Newcastle in hurling as well. But I will ask you for your final pairing, if you don't mind.
I'm going for Ballylanders Ailbees.
Yeah, I'll still stick with the West Limerick side. Monaghan to their side to draw. I'd be confident with St. Ailbees to overcome Drum, which would set up a St. Ailbees and Newcastle final like we had in 19 and 20. And I suppose this weekend as well, then we have the rest of the knockout games starting in the intermediate and junior competitions.
Yeah, well, in the intermediate, there's two very interesting intermediate semi-finals. You have Mungret St. Paul's are playing Ula in Knockeny. I think it's on Saturday evening, and the same evening, then Knockeny are travelling to Kilkeely to play Maru-Boher. Two very interesting semi-finals. Maru-Boher really put it up to Drum Bradford in the semi-final last year. I was at it, and of course, you know that Ula are last year's runners-up. So, and they're really going to be put to the test by a rejuvenated Mungret. So, it's two very, very interesting semi-finals, and could be very, very interesting to see who comes through on is it Saturday or Sunday evening, Jack?
Saturday, I'm fairly sure, just off the top of my head, Saturday. Tonight we have obviously Wednesday for the senior, and then the weekend for the intermediate championships. We said we talk about the hurling and give a roundup. Before we do, we've had an update on the jersey that was released. This unique jersey, shall we say? And you can see there on the chest of the jerseys of Darren Burns, Keenlich, Kyle Hayes. It's people's names. This is the senior hurling training jerseys that was launched last week. I suppose there was a small bit of public backlash on the price of it, and Limerick J have responded. The price reduced to €100. You get your jersey, you get a beanie, a Limerick J beanie, and you get a letter from Declan Hannon and John Kiley. And I suppose not to try and sell it or anything, but you know, jerseys these days are 60, 70 quid as it is. You know, a hat would be 20 or 30 quid, and you know, a letter from John Kiley and Declan Hannon will prove priceless down the years. But look, we're not here for people to buy it, or we're just here to, you know, promote it and say it's there for anyone that wants it. I suppose if you have anything to add to last week, I suppose in relation that the price has changed.
Well, you probably know my view on it, Jack. I'm most disappointed with what has transpired since we spoke last week. Listening to people, and they're comparing it with the price of jerseys, that they can get jerseys in the shop for 50 and 60 euros and all this sort of thing. That is to miss the point of what this was all about. This was a fundraiser. A lot of those people that are cribbing about that, I know the cost of living. You know, Jack, it affects me as much as everybody else. These people, if you said to them 6 years ago, we're going to win 4 All-Irelands in 5 years, they'd gladly part with anything for it. Now, these players, they're after winning 3 All-Irelands in a row. What did they get for the first 2 because of the pandemic? Nothing. In my opinion, it is payback time, and it's very, very little to ask. There is no obligation on anybody to buy the jersey.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that people are missing. You don't have to buy the jersey.
You know, it's not mandatory that you buy the jersey, but the fundraiser is there, and I think the way it has transpired, I'm deeply saddened by it. But look, the jersey is there for €100, and plus the added extra, the letter from John Kiley and the beanie cap and all these beanies, whatever they are. But look, I think it's one way of saying to the lads, thank you, and that's my last say on it.
Yeah, I think the big thing as well, it's not mandatory. If you want to give back, you can. If you don't, or you don't have the means, that's okay. No one will follow you. You can still come to the Gaelic grounds in January and see them tug out in the jersey for the Munster Hurling Cup. But staying on the hurling, Matt, we had an eventful final round in the senior championship. Anyway, we had 3 draws out of the 6, which I didn't think we saw coming. But
Jack,
Doon and Kilmallock.
you predicted one draw and you got it wrong of 3 of them.
Yeah, but I suppose looking at Doon and Kilmallock and what they've done in the last few years, we probably should have, and I don't think either of us thought there would be, an easy win for either team, but we probably should have leaned towards a draw, and that's what we got. And hopefully a taste of things to come, 24 points to 121. Doon did it without Darragh Donovan for over 10 minutes, who saw a second yellow, but I wasn't there. I was in a Skeeton for the Adair Parswell game, but they've been really impressive this year, and more the same, you'd suppose, from teams like that. And the Piercing then drew with a hand, which kept them safe. And, Parswell beat Adair to not only book their place in the quarterfinal, but also relegated there. From Group 1, an eventful final round in Group 1, I suppose, what did you make of it?
Well, yeah, Jack, I was out in Fedimore at the Doon Kilmallock game, and first of all, may I say full credit to the Fedimore club for the manner in which they staged the game, and the manner in which they had their facilities, and the manner in which they ensured that everybody got good parking and reasonable parking. As for the game itself, Jack, it's one of those games it was a privilege to be at. I was talking about being a privilege the previous week to have seen Kyle Hayes score 10 points. This was a game that was a privilege to be at. It showcased all that was good in Limerick hurling. It had a stellar cast, Jack. Without a number of the stars, like Barry Murphy was missing for Doon, as was Adam English, and as you rightly said, Darragh O'Donovan was sent off for a second yellow offence. And on the Kilmallock side, they were down Paddy O'Brien, Micheál Houlihan, Oisin O'Reilly, and after 5 minutes of the game, they were down with the rising star Shane O'Brien. But that did not prevent those that were on the field turning in a superlative performance. I thought it was an excellent game, embellished by a fantastic goal by Pat Ryan 14 seconds into the second half. Now, I thought Pat Ryan had an exceptionally good game, and apart from his goal, he got a point to level matters in the 61st minute from a desperate, awkward angle. It took a fair bit of courage to have a pot at it, but he had it and brought it off. It was a very, very good game for both sides. Now Kilmallock will have to wait a couple of weeks because of making it directly to the semi-final, and Doon will be in action much sooner when they will play Kildimo Palace. Well, a week sooner when they play Kildimo Palace in about 2 weeks' time in the quarter-final in Kilmallock. But I thought it was an excellent game, and a really, really enjoyable game. Now, Micheál Houlihan is Kilmallock's free taker, and Shane O'Brien had taken over the duties from him. And this time it was Conor Clark that took up the job of taking the frees, and he was very, very successful, including landing a 65 right on the hour, which put Kilmallock ahead, only for that fine strike from Pat Ryan at the finish to level it. It was a memorable game, Jack. It's the type of game you'd like to see every week, and two very good teams showing a fair microcosm of a county that has won 4 of the last 5 All-Irelands.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, there's a high possibility we see those teams against each other again. Not to, I suppose, put words in their mouth or anything, but it's likely that we'll see some sort of combination of that. Neither of us saw the Piercing and a hand live, but I think a team that we've heard of throughout the year and seen, we've seen a hand, has been Tom Morrissey, and I suppose the people there are the new ones that can really say what happened. But it sounds like he pulled them out of the fire again, got the goal, and the hand led for most of the game against the Piercek, and as they do when the Piercek came back. But 2 more points from Tom Morrissey, and it was eventually settled, but that was enough to, I suppose, keep them safe. But Tom Morrissey has just been a different level this year, and I suppose it's no surprise. But he wasn't, I suppose, at the level that we know he can get to for Limerick, but he's certainly proven it for a club, and a club that really do need him, that, you know, he is the star man of that team, and he's producing the goods time after time, and they'll be in Senior A for the 4th successive year. Not only down to,
I saw Tom against Kilmallock, and I simply thought he was just phenomenal. You know, he was just, you know, absolutely unbelievable. You know,
against the Dare as well, the first round.
Yeah. Oh, just simply fantastic. Oh, what a player, like, you know, that can deliver for his county for the first 6 months of the year and did turn in those level of performances for his club. Absolutely phenomenal. But I'm not in the slightest bit surprised, Jack, because I would rate Tom Morrissey right up there, you know.
Yeah, there's a reason he's a double All-Star, 4 All-Irelands, 2 21s All-Ireland, 2 Munster minors. So yeah, a hand are safe, and Passwell got through it there. They did the hard way. I was out in Askeaton at the game, and like you said about Fedamore, fair play to the lads in Askeaton, went after out hitch. It was a huge crowd, biggest crowd I've ever seen at a game in Askeaton. Now, the lads did say Kildimo, Pallaskenry and Ballybrown was similar enough crowd, but no, great to get a game so close to home, and a good contest. And Mark Carmody and Jack Keller have been very good throughout the year, kind of led from the front throughout the game, and then it was Darren Burns towards the end, caught a couple of balls, and they just pulled clear, and they're relegated, and it's down again after getting promoted, after being relegated. It's a disappointing one for Adair, and we had said that maybe they'd be the ones to break the monopoly in the top 4, but that's not to be the case. But before we get into the quarterfinal draw, like, I think a word has
Jack,
to go.
just before you go from that, you mentioned two names there, Mark Carmody and Jack Kelleher. I thought those two were phenomenal in the game against Doon as well. I thought they were excellent. Mark Carmody is having a fantastic season, and so is Jack Kelleher.
Yeah, 2 brilliant seasons so far, and I was trying to do up a team of the year, and we'll go through that very briefly at the end of this. But there's so many names of players. But one team that I want to touch on before we get into that quarterfinal draw is Kildimo Pallaskenry, and we spoke about them earlier. We're talking about the football, but I mean, another promotion, Matt. So in 17, they're intermediate champions. So in 18, they lost the semi-final in the Premier Intermediate. 19, they lost the final. 20, they won it. 21, they won the County Cup in their first year in senior, and now they're going to be in Senior A for 2023. You know, it's a phenomenal achievement for a club that are doing it at both codes and wouldn't really have a huge pick. It's kind of the same core group of lads that are driving it for both codes. But, you know, fair dues to KP, who are going to be in Senior A next year.
Oh yeah, fantastic, and they really had to dig deep. I was at the game, they really had to dig deep against Garris-Ballan, and like, in fairness, Garris-Ballan did a good job on Kyle Hayes, even though I understand I heard later that he may have been suffering from a bit of an injury. But Robert Sampson, you know, he was welded to him, and Kieran Sheehan sat in front of him, so to make sure that as little as possible trickled through to him. But it was a good overall performance by Kildimo Pallaskenry. But Garris-Ballan would be left to ask questions as to why the level of indiscipline, which cost them dearly. Sean Barry got 14 points from place balls. Now, one of them was a sublimely struck line ball late in the game, but his shooting was absolutely unerring. It made a huge contribution. Overall, throughout the field, it was a pretty even game, other than that. But Garris-Ballan didn't arrive in Carrick-on-Laois the other evening to make up the numbers. And they had an ambition of their own. Had they won the game, you know, they would have seen where it would have taken them. and to remove them on to 6 points. So I would say that unlike the previous week when they steamrolled past Blackrock, on this occasion, Kildimo Pallaskenry were asked serious questions by Gareth Ballan and responded, Jack.
Yeah, you mentioned Sean Barry there. Brilliant free taker. Didn't start against Munger in the first day. I don't know why he might have been injured, but he's one of the best free takers I've ever seen, and he was the same against Blackrock in the 2019 final. He kept them in it, and deservedly so. They're gone up, and we talked about star players shout the year. I just think Kyle has been phenomenally good, as you expect. John Chalk in goals as well, and I think Cathal Downs has been brilliant all year. He got 3 more
Cathal
points
Downs
at the
was
weekend.
very impressive. Very impressed with Cathal Downs, and of course, Chalky is Chalky.
Yeah, I think
he'll have seen it all, and he will be in Section A next year. You can bet your life on it.
Yeah, I think it'll be his 27th year. So I suppose it just goes to show that you keep plugging away, like these things can happen. Now, I suppose the first 20 or so years that they were kind of in around intermediate ranks, but he'll be senior A and so will KP. So I suppose fair dues to them. And South Liberties are the other team that got through. They knew they had to beat Ballybrown and hope results elsewhere went their way. And, first and foremost, they got the job done. They beat Ballybrown. That's all they could do. And Munger Trom with Blackrock allowed them to go through. But I suppose it's gone a bit sour for Ballybrown in a way, but South Liberties won't mind that in the slightest. They're into the quarterfinals for third successive year. Briefly on the in the quarterfinals, Matt.
Before you go there, I have a certain amount of sympathy with Ballybrown, Jack. Anything that was to go wrong went wrong for Ballybrown this year because they had a great start to the championship. They look the team to beat, and then they were undone by Chalky's late goal there against Kildimo Pallaskenry. But they've been dogged by injuries, the loss of Stevie O'Reilly and a couple of players to injury, and then you had the loss of Cullen Coughlin for the final game, which was a huge loss. It's been a disappointing year for Ballybrown, but they certainly are a young side, and they have the potential, and I certainly spare a thought for them. I think they've been unlucky this year, no question about it.
Yeah, they'll have a chance against Munger St. Paul's. They'll play in the County Cup final on the 8th of October, the same weekend as the quarterfinals. That game is on in Clahan. But the quarterfinals, Matt, KP versus Doon and South Liberties versus Patrick's Well. We've been asking for someone to break into that top 4, and KP and South Liberties will lead the charge this year. Tough tests for both sides, but I suppose 3 weeks out, if you were to pick one of them, which team would you say is more likely to come through?
Well, for up to last year, we were decrying the fact that none of the teams that had come up from Section B had made any real impact on the quarterfinals because they had tended to be one-sided affairs. We got 2 cracking quarterfinals last year, and we came to the brink of the 2 teams from Section B winning because Kilmallock needed extra time to see off South Liberties, and Patrick's Well needed the late intervention of Jason Gillan with 4 points to get the better of it there. So we possibly will have more of the same, Jack. I expect Kildimo Pallaskenry and South Liberties to account for themselves very well. I think South Liberties, if they produce the performance that they produced against Kilmallock last year, and we know now that it's in them, but it probably hasn't surfaced yet this year, then I think they will be in with a right chance.
Yeah.
And for Kildimo Pallaskenry, it has to be bonus territory. It has to be bonus territory. And they will be prepared to give it a right go. Kildimo Pallaskenry will give it a right go against Doon, Jack. I know we'll be previewing the games nearer to the time, but I'm really looking forward to them. They're both on in Kilmallock on a Saturday and a Sunday in early October, so we're really looking forward to them.
Yeah, and I suppose for KP, it's that's what they're going to be playing next week or next year, week on week, is the likes of Doon and these teams. So it'll be a good gauge to see where they actually are. I Briefly, in the other competitions that came to close, the group stages, Intermediate Championship, na Piarsaigh topped the table, as did Croke Kilfinny. They're straight through into semi-final, and then your quarterfinals, Brewery versus Palace Green and Croom versus Granite Ballingarry. I might ask you now, Matt, we had made our predictions pre the championship. If you were to call from those 6 teams, where would you be leaning towards?
I'd probably be leaning towards na Piarsaigh, but I'd be aware of Brewery.
Yeah, and a Piarsaigh double seems, or the
beware
triple.
of Brewery and Croke Kilfinny. Croke Kilfinny will want to go one better.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of instances where a team got to final and came back the following year and won the championship. We've seen KP do it, we saw Glenroe do it, we saw Newcastle do it, so it has been done an awful lot in the last few years. So I wouldn't rule out someone like Croke, and the Piarsaigh triple is certainly on the cards here. And then the Junior A Championship, we have our 8 quarter-finalists. Cricora versus Killeedy, Castlestown Ballygran versus Drumbrodford, St. Kieran's versus Kilteely Drumkeen, and Patrickswell versus Doon. Similarly, Matt, if you were to call where that competition will end up, where would you think?
Oh, I'd like to put the 6 8 names into a hat and pull one out, Jack. I haven't a clue.
We spoke about teams coming back from losing a final. That would be St. Kieran's in that case. And you did talk about them so far. They're one of 2 teams with a 100% record themselves, and Patrickswell. Would they be one of the teams you'd be looking to come out of this hat if you were to draw?
Yeah, of course. Anybody that comes through without, with full points from their games, they have a certain amount of momentum and winning mentality, Jack. But knockout hurling takes on a life of its own.
It does,
and Castletown Ballygran, they'll have a say in it, I think.
Yeah, I think if it's not St. Kieran's, I think the winner of Cricora and Killeedy could be our winners. But yeah, it's very interesting. And then obviously we have the Premier Intermediate Championship, and I was talking to you yesterday. I don't think we've seen a scenario like this going into the final round, that we have no team guaranteed to be through. Now, some teams are obviously in a better position than others, but you have Monaleen top table with 9 points, ahead of Effin with 8, and then you have Bruff, Glenroe, Newcastle West all on 7, Drumlacca on 5. Any of those 6 teams can go through. Cappamore's season, they won't get relegated, they won't get promoted, and Knockany have been relegated to the intermediate ranks. But I mean, it's another, I suppose, positive competition that we've lauded over the years, that you go into a final round with 8 teams and 7 rounds, and you have not one team goes through. Like, who has the advantage there going into the final round?
It's very, very hard to say. You'd have to say Monaleen are in a very strong position. Effin, and coincidentally, Monaleen and Effin meet in the last round.
That's what I'm saying, so
interesting. The last round, just for a matter of interest, is Monaleen against Effin, Bruff against Cappamore, Glenroe against Drumlacca, and Newcastle West against Knockany.
Because Monaleen can be caught if they lose, and 2 of Bruff, Glenroe, and Newcastle win. So even though there are 9 points, they still need to get the job done in the final round. That's why I was asking which way do you see that one going.
Can you put the table up again there, and I'll explain to you why. Where we'll say Effin to win, that would take them to 10 points out of reach.
Yeah.
Were Bruff, Glenroe, and Newcastle West to win, that would take them on 9 points, and you'd have 4 teams on 9 points. As it currently stands, Monaleen are plus 16. Bruff are plus 14, and Glenroe are plus 12. Now Newcastle West are plus 2. So in that type of scenario, Monaleen have very, very little leverage in terms of scoring difference.
Yeah, and also Newcastle are playing Knockany, and we've seen the likes of Blackrock, who are already relegated, going to a final game, put up a fight, but Newcastle will be hoping not only to get a win, but probably to get better their points difference. And if Monaleen are to lose, that points difference will obviously go against them. And Drummond Clacka, I know
the crucial game there, Jack, is Glenroe and Drummond Clacka.
Yeah, because Drummond still have their own chance; they can still get the 7 points. So I mean, that final round is on the weekend of the 8th as well. It's a really busy weekend. That weekend of the 8th, we have the final round, Premier Intermediate. We have the quarterfinals in the junior, quarterfinals in the intermediate and senior as well. I think we have football quarterfinals on. No, the football semi-finals are on that weekend as well, I think, so we all go that weekend, Matt. But as always, we'll finish with our predictions. And if I look at how we got on last week, we did allude to the fact that it wasn't our best week in terms of prediction with all the draws, but out of 6, I got 1, you got 2, which is fairly poor showing from us, Matt, but we did get 5 and 6 the last few weeks. But anything to say
there
on
were 3 draws there, Jack.
Yeah, anything to say
There were 3
on
draws there.
will you be starting to look for draws this weekend in retaliation to that?
No, I don't think I will. I went for 1 draw and it didn't happen. Bruff and Glenroe, and you went for 1 draw, Callis Ballan and Kildimo Pallaskinry, and it didn't happen. So start this week, Jack.
Yeah, if I was to, I suppose a spoiler, I'm going to go for 1 draw anyway. So we'll get to it. But we'll start top of the table, Group 1, Newcastle West versus Father Casey's.
Newcastle West by 3.
Newcastle West by 3. I'm going to go NCW by 4. Oh, and we have been doing the first goal scorers for the hurling, so we might transfer it over to the football. I know last week I went for Niall McCahey 3rd week in a row from Mungret, and he eventually got me off the board, and so did Pat Ryan. I don't know if there was a lot of games that didn't have a goal, but if you were to say goal scorer in that one, Matt.
Mike McMahon.
I knew you'd go with Mike Mack there. I'd say he's got 5 goals already in the competition. I'm going to go with Rory O'Brien for Father Casey's in that one. Clahan versus Monaleen.
I'm going Monaleen by 4.
Monaleen by 4. I'm going to side with Monaleen as well by 3. And I'm going to say Brian Donovan to get a goal on his return if he's playing. That is, of course.
He's been back for 2 games. I agree with you, Brian Donovan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. We had those 2 games. We had round 3 and 4 actually. Yeah. Ula and Galway then. So I suppose which team will avoid relegation?
Galway by 1.
Galway by a point and a goal score.
Oh God, Owen O'Mahony.
Owen O'Mahony. I'm just thinking now. I would have went Galway by a point as well. Do you know what? I'm going to go for a draw in this game, which would be good enough for Galway to avoid. Yeah, and I'm going to go with Ger Quinlan to get a goal there. From what I saw from Galway against Father Casey's, they gave him an awful lot of it that day. Was, as we said, these games take on a life of their own. We'll start then with atop the table in Group 2, Adair versus St. Kieran's.
Adair by 2.
Adair by 2 and a goal score.
Robbie Burke.
Robbie Burke. I'm going to disagree with you here now. I'm going to go with Kieran's by 2 points at the top of the table. And I'm going to say Seamus Mangan to get the first goal. Kildimo Pallaskinry versus Ballysteen.
Kildimo Pallaskinry by 2, Jack. Because I know you're going to disagree with me.
Yeah. Are you going for KP to disagree with me, or are you going for KP because you think they'll win? Or both?
Both.
KP by 2. I'm going to go.
And I'm going Nashi for the first goal.
Peter Nash, first goal scorer. I'm going to go Ballysteen by 3. Davy O'Shaughnessy, first goal scorer. And then Galty Gales versus Ballylanders.
Gales by 3.
Gales by 3. And a goal scorer?
Alan Condon.
Ellen Condon. This is the other game where I went for a draw. I actually changed my mind there, so I'm going to go for a draw there. Robbie Child's first goal scorer. So looking at these permutations, you will have Newcastle topping Group 1, followed by Casey's and Monaleen, with Ula into relegation final. I will have Newcastle topping it, Casey's and Monaleen as well, and Ula to go to the drop relegation final, we'll say. And then in Group 2, you have Adair topping it. This is just by judging by these permutations. Adair topping the group ahead of Kieran's Kildine Palace Kenry to finish third, just ahead of Galty Gales, and Ballylanders obviously in relegation final. I have it Kieran's topping the group ahead of Adair. There'll be enough for Ballysteen to come through in third there, judging by my permutations, and obviously Ballylanders relegation. So that might have been premeditated how my predictions are going, maybe in our favour, but you know, a lot to look forward to this weekend, Matt. We obviously have
a great weekend to look forward to. These are the weekends that we live for, you know. Absolutely fantastic. And you know, the games are coming thick and fast, but the way they're structured, Jack, is very good. And I know it's condensed. I take all of that, and you know, just putting in a little plug at this stage. I hope that there won't be a clash with that the senior football semi-finals will be, you know, they clashed last year with the senior hurling semi-finals. So I would like that they're on the same week as the quarterfinals of the hurling, aren't they?
Yeah, the football semi-final is down. They're down for the 8th of October, which is the same day as Doon and Kildine Palace Kenry in the hurling quarterfinal. But also the final round, the Premier Intermediates, all on that Saturday, and so is the County Cup final. So be hopeful that maybe get some of those games in on Friday night, and then having split between Saturday day and Saturday evening, because you know, look, there's a lot of games to get in there. We do understand that.
It is that we get all that, but you know, if the major games could be spread out a bit, you know, it would help, and there'd be an awful lot of people much happier. Because there is a hardcore of people there, Jack, that you see them at every single game, and they're telling you this, and that, you know, there was an awful lot of people complaining for the first 2 rounds of the hurling about so much big games being on at the one time. And, you know, I know the logistics, and having served on a board for 10 years, I know that the problems that confront officials when they're making fixtures, you know, and there's little nuances there that, you know, that people don't sometimes see, and as to why fixtures are in such a way. But look, I think that there has been a very decent job done in the way that the fixtures have been structured, and the way that the fixtures even have been organised. And like we saw the drama we had last Sunday, it was just fantastic. And let's hope we'll have the same drama this weekend on Saturday and Sunday in the Senior Football Championships.
Yeah, I think the final round of games is one you accept they're going to be on the same time. You're supposed to be checking your phone and seeing how things are going. But just on those senior games on Saturday, it's Group 2. You have Ballylanders versus Galty Gales at 4 o'clock in Kilfinnan. All these games are Saturday at 4 o'clock. KP versus Ballysteen in the Bog Garden, and St. Kieran's versus Dare in Croke. And then the following day at 4 o'clock again, you Father Casey's versus Newcastle West in Drumcolor. That game has been streamed. You can find the links on the Limerick SHC website or on Sport in Limerick. You have Clahan versus Monaleen in Mungret, and Ula versus Galway in Cappamore. So plenty. There's a full fixture list on the website as well for anyone that wants to get these games. So don't miss out on the final round of football. If it's half as exciting as the hurling, we'll be delighted. So I think we've all everything covered for today, Matt. You will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we do.
We do. We're good to go, Jack.
We're good to go. So I suppose best of luck to the 4 teams in the ladies football semi-finals tonight, first and foremost, and then to all the teams at the weekend. Hopefully my predictions can come true for more reasons than just beating you, but the permutations that come with them. But again, huge thank you to you, Matt, and a huge thank you to everyone for listening. This has been Tree Talk episode 201. Thank you for watching, and we'll be in touch again soon.
And Jack, thanks to the people that gave us the good wishes on our 200.
Yeah, a huge shout out to people that said it online and in person as well. as long as people are happy to listen to us or watch us, even if there's one person there, that's good enough for us. So again, a huge thank you to you. And I suppose this will be, we'll round out the rest of the year with this intro, but I suppose coming into 2023, we'll have to change it just with some of the clips that we've been blessed that we touched on last week. But for now, a huge thank you to you, Matt, and we'll talk again soon.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the workout today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.